President.
Senator from Vermont.
Madam President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Madam President, I'm here for Senator Boxer in terms of the transportation bill, but before I get into transportation, I wanted to say a word on another issue that does not get the attention that it deserves, and that's why, as chairman of the subcommittee on primary health care, I'll be holding a hearing on the dental crisis in America. As I think many Americans know, although they don't hear a whole lot about it, we as a nation are in the midst of a very severe dental crisis. More than 47 million Americans live in places where it is difficult to get dental care. About 17 million low-income children received no dental care in 2009. 1/4 of adults in the United States aged 65 or older have lost all of their teeth. Low-income adults are almost twice as likely as higher-income adults to have gone without a dental checkup in the previous year. And I should tell you that bad dental health impacts overall health care. When you talk about dental care, you're talking about health care in general. If people have bad teeth or no teeth, they're unable to digest their food, which causes digestive problems. People who have poor teeth are likely can get infections leading to very serious health problems. And in fact, there are instances where people have actually died because of poor teeth and infections. Furthermore, the risk for diabetes, heart disease, and poor birth outcomes are also significant if people are not having their teeth well maintained. Madam President, just since 2006, there were over 830,000 visits to emergency rooms across the country because you got a lot of low-income people who have severe pain. They can't find a dentist, so they go into an emergency room. I suspect maybe they get their tooth extracted or they get some painkiller, but that certainly is not an adequate substitute for providing the dental care that all Americans need. Madam President, almost 60% of children aged 5 to 17 have cavities, making tooth decay 5 times more common than asthma among children of this age. And in fact, as I understand it, the single most prevalent reason for children being absent from school is, in fact, dental problems. Now, in the midst of the severe need for more dentists, what is happening is that our dental community, our dentists are becoming older, and many of them are retiring. In fact, we need a lot more new dentists to replace those that are retiring. But the sad truth is that more dentists retire each year than there are dental school graduates to replace them. Madam President, one of the other problems that we're facing is that only 20% of the nation's practicing dentists provide care to people with Medicaid. So that is a serious problem. We need more dentists, but equally important, we need to make sure that the dentists are providing service to the people who need it the most. And one of the sad realities of contemporary dental life is that only 20% of the nation's practicing dentists provide care to people with Medicaid, and only an extremely small percentage devote a substantial part of their practice to caring for those who are underserved. The current access problem is exacerbated by the fact that private practices are often located in middle-class and wealthy suburbs, and what we need is to bring dentists into those areas where people need dental care the most. So that is certainly something that we need to do. Further, we need to expand Medicaid and other dental insurance coverage. 1/3 of Americans do not have dental coverage. Traditional Medicare for seniors does not cover dental services, and states can choose whether their Medicaid programs provide coverage for dental care for adults, and the truth is that many of them do not. Let me give you some good news, I think, in terms of where we are making some progress. Recently, and I've been active in that effort, there has been an expansion of federally qualified community health centers. And community health centers provide health and dental care to anybody in the area, regardless of their ability to pay. And we now have a situation where community health centers are providing dental services to over 3.5 million people across the country. And I'm happy to say that in the state of Vermont, in recent years, we have seen a very, very significant increase, not only in community health centers in general, but in community health centers that are providing state-of-the-art dental care. We have beautiful new facilities located in Richford, in the northern part of our state, in Plainfield, Vermont, in the central part of our state, in Rutland, and in other areas. Burlington is just developing a beautiful, beautiful new dental facility. Furthermore, one of the areas I think we are seeing some progress in Vermont and around the country, which I think has huge potential, is putting dental offices right in schools. And I know that in Burlington, Vermont, we helped bring that about some years ago, and you have kids from all over the city of Burlington getting their dental care at one particular school. It is working phenomenally well. We have similar programs in Bennington and in Richford. So, Madam President, I just did want to mention that I think the time is now for the Congress to begin addressing this issue. And one of the things that I've done recently is on my website, which is sanders.senate.gov, I have asked people in Vermont and all over the country to tell us their stories in terms of what happens if they or the members of their family don't have access to dental care. And we have received, Madam President, more than 1,200 stories from Vermont and all over this country. And those stories are heartbreaking because they tell the tales of people who are suffering every day, who simply don't have the money to go to a dentist to take care of their dental needs, parents who are worried about their kids, and pointing out how hard it is to find affordable dental care in their communities. And if people wanted to write my office, go to my website, sanders.senate.gov. We would love to hear from them, because I think there are a lot of stories out there that are not being told. And what I would like to do, Madam President, is read from a publication that we have just produced called Dental Crisis in America, the Need to Expand Access. And this will be distributed and released tomorrow at our hearing. But I did want to read a few stories which I think speak to the experience that whole lots of people from one end of this country to the other are having regarding lack of access to dental care. And this is from a woman named Heather Getty, who lives in East Fairfield, Vermont, in the northern part of our state. And this is what she says, and I quote, "My husband and I and our 4 kids are the working poor. We have to think about rent and electricity before we think about dental care. My wisdom teeth have been a problem for over a decade now. I take ibuprofen and just keep on going. My husband has not seen a dentist since he was a teenager. He's afraid of the costs if they find something. So it's been 20 years. Because of Vermont's Dr. Dinosaur program, at least my children have been lucky enough to have regular cleanings. But I have to comb through the yellow pages to find an office who will accept their coverage. One time I missed an appointment because my car broke down, and when I called to reschedule, they told me that we had been blacklisted, that no one from my family could be seen by that office again. We've learned over the years how important dental care is. If you get preventative care early, you are less likely to have problems later on." And that's from Heather Getty in East Fairfield, Vermont. Let me read you a statement from Sean Jones in Brattleboro, Vermont. Quote, "Last year I had a toothache that was so painful I had trouble eating and sleeping. My girlfriend is also covered by Medicaid, so I called her dentist, but they wouldn't see me. So I called 12 more dentists in the area, but they all said the same thing. They weren't taking new Medicaid patients. A few said to call back in 3 months, which seems like a long time to live with a bad toothache. Finally, someone from the Office of Vermont Health Access helped me get an emergency voucher to get my tooth pulled. I'm just grateful that my girlfriend had a car to get me there." And that's just a few of the, very few of the statements that came from Vermont and, in fact, from all over the country. Let me read from a statement from Dr. David Nash, who's the William R. Willard Professor of Dental Education, professor of pediatric dentistry, College of Dentistry, University of Kentucky in Lexington. And Dr. Nash writes, and I quote, "Society has granted the profession of dentistry the exclusive right and privilege of caring for the oral health of the nation's children. Unfortunately, the dental delivery system in place today does not provide adequate access to care for our children. In many instances, it is because few dentists will accept Medicaid payments. In other countries of the world, children's oral health is cared for by dental therapists, primarily in school-based programs. This results in an overwhelming majority of children being able to receive care. Dental therapists, as utilized internationally, do not create a two-tiered system of care. They have extensive training in caring for children, significantly more than the typical graduate of our nation's dental schools. International research supports the high quality of care dental therapists provide. The time has arrived for the United States to develop a new workforce model to care for our children's oral health." End of quote. And what Dr. Nash is talking about is another issue that we'll be discussing tomorrow in the hearing. And that is, it is clear from international studies, and in fact from some states in the United States, that there are well-trained people who can take care of certain types of dental problems who are not dentists. And I think that's an area that we need to explore. How can we expand the dental profession to include people who do not graduate dental school but who have the qualifications to take care of a variety of dental problems? Let me just read another story that comes from Vermont regarding what happens if you don't have dental care. And that is from Kia Morris from Bennington, Vermont. And she says, and I quote, "When I was pregnant, I had a tooth infection that had gotten into my lymph nodes, and I needed a root canal, but adult Medicaid has a $495 cap, which wasn't enough. Dental care shouldn't be a luxury," end of quote. What she is saying is that in Vermont and in many other states where you do have Medicaid helping out for dental care for low-income people, there is often a cap, and that cap is much too low to provide the services that many folks need. So bottom line, Mr. President, is that we have a crisis in terms of access to dental care in this country. We lag behind many other countries around the world in that regard. We have many, many people who have no dental insurance at all. Some who do have dental insurance, such as my family, have very limited coverage. I think it's about $1,000 a year. Meanwhile, the cost of dental care is sky high, and we are also going to explore why that is so. I am not sure that I understand, or many people understand, why dental care is as expensive as it is. What I do know is that in Mexico, there is a city in northern Mexico whose function in life is to provide dental care for Americans who go down below the border because they can't afford dental care in this country. So there is a serious problem. People don't have dental insurance. Low-income people don't have access to dental care. We have many dentists out there who are not accepting Medicaid patients, or if they are accepting Medicaid patients, they're accepting a very, very few of them. The population, our dentists in general are getting older, and we're losing more of them through retirement than we are seeing graduates of dental school. And even the dentists that we are graduating are often not migrating to the areas where we need them the most. Many dentists are involved in, making our teeth white and shiny and our smiles very beautiful, but meanwhile, in those communities, there are people who are seeing the teeth in their mouth rotting away, kids who have dental problems, and they are not getting the treatment that they need. So I hope, Mr. President, that tomorrow at the hearing we're going to bring forth some great panelists. We're going to be talking about the issue. I intend, as soon as we can, to kind of introduce comprehensive legislation to make sure that every person in this country has access to affordable and decent quality dental care. And with that, Mr. President, I would note the absence of a quorum. And the
clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President.
The senator from Vermont,
I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
without objection.
Mr. President, we are debating the transportation bill, so let me say a few words about transportation. Why not? Mr. President, I think everybody in this country, or at least anybody who gets into an automobile and drives around, understand that we have a major infrastructural crisis in this country and that it is becoming more dire each passing year. The American Society of Civil Engineers has reported that we should be investing $2.2 trillion over the next 5 years simply to get our roads, bridges, transit, and aviation to a passable condition. This is more than 8 times the annual rate of spending proposed in the bill under consideration. So, first point I think that we should acknowledge is that the legislation before us, which I support and which is significantly is a step forward, is a very modest proposal going nowhere near as far as we should be going. And clearly, I see when I go home to Vermont, and I'm sure, Mr. President, you see when you go home to Pennsylvania, the very apparent infrastructural needs that we as a nation face. In my state of Vermont, just under a third of Vermont's bridges are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. That's about a third of Vermont's bridges are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. 36% of our federal aid roads are in need of major repairs, and in fact, a recent national report ranked Vermont's rural roads as the worst in the nation, and that was before the very terrible storm that we experienced, Tropical Storm Irene, which caused hundreds of millions of additional dollars of damage to our roads. I think the point here, Mr. President, is not a complicated point. I was a mayor for 8 years, and I had to deal with the roads and the water system in the city of Burlington, and I think I speak for every mayor in the world to tell you that infrastructure does not get better all by itself. I think we can all agree that if you do nothing, if you do not invest in repairs, it just is not going to get better. In fact, it will get worse. And one of the really dumb things that we do as a nation is we end up spending a lot more money than we should in repairing our roads and bridges and water systems because we don't adequately fund maintenance. If you keep things in good repair, it will end up costing you less money. If you ignore them and they deteriorate and you need to massively rebuild them, it ends up being a much more expensive proposition. So as a nation, what we should be doing is properly maintaining our infrastructure, investing a certain sum every single year. And I should tell you that compared to the rest of the world, we do not do a particularly good job at that. Right now, the United States invests just 2.4% of our GDP on infrastructure. Europe invests twice that amount, and China invests almost 4 times our rate. Roughly 9% of their GDP goes to infrastructure. So I think in terms of our own needs, we are falling behind. Internationally, other countries are doing a lot better than we are. Mr. President, equally important is we are in the midst of the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. If you look at those people who have given up looking for work, those people who are working part-time, who want to work full-time, real unemployment in this country is not just the official 8.2%, it's closer to 15%. And what economists tell us is that if we are serious about creating jobs, investing in infrastructure is probably the best way to do that. It's the easiest way to create meaningful, decent-paying jobs. For every $1 billion of federal funds spent, we can create or maintain nearly 35,000 jobs. And given the economic crisis that we face, that is exactly what we should be doing. Mr. President, in addition to preserving more than 1.8 million jobs, the legislation that we are dealing with today, which is being presented by Senators Boxer and Inhofe, will create up to 1 million new jobs by expanding the TIFIA program, a measure championed by Chairperson Boxer. Mr. President, this is an extremely important issue. It is important for our productivity, because when you have a crumbling infrastructure, productivity suffers. It is important in terms of international competition. It is important in terms of job creation. It is important in order to provide a basic need for millions and millions of Americans. People do not want to be driving on roads which are falling apart, where there are huge potholes. People want to make sure that when they go over a bridge, that bridge will not collapse. People want to make sure that we have a strong rail system, not a rail system which in fact is far behind Europe, Japan, and China. So this bill, while modest in terms of what our needs are, is a step forward, and it is a bipartisan bill. I hope we can get to it and pass it as quickly as possible, because the infrastructure needs of this country are great and they must be addressed. Mr. President, with that, I would yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. As we wait for a senator to speak, some news about one of the senators here in the chamber. Senator Olympia Snowe, the Republican from Maine, has announced that she will not run for re-election. A story in the Washington Post writes that in announcing her plans, Snowe, 65, emphasized that she is in good health and was prepared for the campaign ahead, but she said that she was swayed by the increasing polarization in Washington. In the statement saying, quote, "Unfortunately, I do not realistically expect the partisanship of recent years in the Senate to change over the short term. So at this stage of my tenure in public service, I've concluded that I am not prepared to commit myself to an additional 6 years in the Senate." A part of a statement from Senator Olympia Snowe. Over the past couple of weeks, the Senate has been debating a bill that pays for bridges, roads, and transit programs, while negotiations have continued off the floor on what amendments would be allowed to the bill. Today, Senator Reed said that there could be votes on the measure on Thursday. Also, there are a couple more hours left for voters to go to the polls in the Michigan and Arizona primaries. We'll have live coverage of the results with speeches from all 4 Republican presidential candidates. Mitt Romney will be in Novi, Michigan, Rick Santorum in Grand Rapids. Ron Paul is not in either of the primary states. He's in Springfield, Virginia. And the same goes for Newt Gingrich, who will be holding a rally at the University of West Georgia. So we'll have the candidates plus your phone calls on the C-SPAN networks tonight.
President.
The senator from Colorado.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 381 submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 381, authorizing the taking of a photograph in the chamber of the United States Senate.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to and the motion to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, the Senate adjourn until Wednesday, February 29th at 9:30 a.m., that following the prayer and pledge, the journal proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the 2 leaders be reserved for their use later in the day. That the Senate be in a period of morning business for 1 hour, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each, with the time equally divided and controlled between the 2 leaders or their designees, with the Republicans controlling the first half hour and the majority controlling the second half, and that following morning business, the Senate resume consideration of S-1813, the Surface Transportation Bill.
Without objection.
We will continue to work on a process to complete action on the Surface Transportation Bill, and if there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it adjourn under the previous order.
Without objection. Senate stands adjourned until 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. That was it.
Senate leaders this afternoon have apparently agreed to allow some amendments to the transportation bill that are unrelated to the measure. One by Missouri Republican Roy